language and discussions. If you're easily offended, do not continue.
We would be honored if you would join us.
How are you feeling? The latest workups on your condition indicate that all damage has been reversed. Recovery is total. I believe you have been quite fortunate. No further thanks are necessary, Commander, but you are most welcome. It is my function and pleasure as a medical droid to help and heal human beings.
I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
All right, hello everybody. Welcome to Star Wars from the Back to Tank. I am Michael Flores, your host for the review of Star Wars The Last Jedi. And of course, I am in the cockpit with my fellow Porg. Are we Porgs now? Is that what I'm saying? That's all right.
That's all right. It's all right. It's okay to be a Porg.
Yeah, I kind of like the Porgs.
I kind of like the Porgs.
Yeah, so today David and I are going to be reviewing and discussing Star Wars The Last Jedi. Don't get nervous because we will be doing a spoiler-free show. This will be something a little different than we have done in the past for our Star Wars reviews. So if you have listened before, this will be a little different. And for the purposes of my own sanity, as well as our potential listeners, we're going to separate our reviews into two parts. All right, David? So pay attention, because I don't want you dropping any spoilers, David, during this discussion. So these are the rules for this review. All right? So the first half will be a spoiler-free review and analysis, an academic analysis.
We're going to Roger Ebert and Siskel this, ain't we?
Yes. All right. The second half will be a more thorough breakdown that will include discussions that will be spoiler-eccentric. And when we get to that part, we will give you a warning. That way you can take an escape pod and run away, like many of the Resistance fighters were trying to do. Wait, is that a spoiler already?
No,
that's a spoiler. I just said I said something for the movie. Prank caller.
Prank caller.
Jesus, I better be careful here. All right.
You were worried about me.
I know. I'm the first one to do it. I apologize. There'll be no more spoilers moving forward. Okay. So, David. So, I think by breaking up those reviews, Dave, breaking up how we're going to do it, it's going to help us be able to tackle the movie a bit better. Also, it's going to help us separate the fanboy from the movie critic. And that's something that's very hard to do when you're reviewing something like this. Both of us are avid Star Wars nut jobs. We are Star Wars freaks. And I feel like you can look at this movie two different ways. You really can. And the way I view this movie as a Star Wars fan is very different than how I view this as a movie critic. And I know not everybody has that skill. And yes, David, I am going to say it is a skill.
It's a lost art, dude.
It is
honestly
a skill.
A lost art.
You have to be able to separate yourself from the material.
Yes.
And it is very hard. It's not easy. We actually watched this movie Monday. Monday afternoon is when the press was allowed to watch this film. And we waited. We said, you know what, Dave? I don't know how to review this. That's specifically what we said as we were walking out of the theater. We both looked at each other and said, we need to wait. We were going to do it Tuesday. And we said, no, we can't. Let's just wait till Wednesday evening. And I'm glad we did that, Dave, because without being an exaggerating moron here, for the last 2 days, I Qui-Gon Jinned this. Like, I meditated while I was waiting patiently for the shields to lower.
I believe it, man, because the last couple days I've been kind of doing the same thing. I've been trying to actually. I really thought to myself at the beginning, when I saw this on Monday, I wanted to take a look at this film as an actual film critic.
Yeah.
And actually make people like Roger Ebert proud.
Yeah,
you know?
right? Because all we get nowadays is either
blog talk.
Yes,
Blog talk.
A bunch of either trolls or people who don't understand what they were trying to do, or you get people who are overly blowing the movie because they can't separate the Star Wars fan from the actual movie critic. So it's definitely a process, and I'm glad we were able to take those 2.5 days to kind of decompress, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So where to start, David? Let's try to do this here.
Okay.
Again, as the movie critic, here we go. Now, with each new Star Wars film, yeah, that's a great place to start. Let's start there. With each new Star Wars film, I think it's safe to say that we all have expectations. Things we hope to see, things we want to see, and, fingers crossed, and hoping that this movie will be the best movie ever. I think these are the thoughts that we go into with every single Star Wars film.
Yes.
Even as a movie critic, you don't want to go in seeing a shit movie. You want to see something that's going to blow your mind and something that is worthy of the hype.
Well, yeah, one of the things that I was doing researching on trying to review this thing was actually looking at a lot of past reviewers like Roger Ebert's stances on franchises like this, like Star Wars and Star Trek and everything. And one of the things that I took away from it was Roger Ebert once said that he wants to go to a movie sometimes and he wants to have an out of body experience.
Yeah.
And kind of like you go to a movie to kind of have these expectations that you want to be immersed. It's
right.
all about the immersion.
Right.
And it's really difficult, especially when nowadays, especially when you're a fan of something so diehard of a franchise like Star Wars, which there's a lot of people out there that are diehard Star Wars fans and they will gobble up anything that basically has Star Wars in it and won't really take a look at something and say, hey, is this critically a good film?
Right. And I think that goes with the territory. You're always having expectations. And I think even more so with Star Wars. I think when you're a movie critic or even a Star Wars fan, you have these expectations and you always go in thinking and wishing this will be the best. This will be the best Star Wars movie to date. And after the successful relaunch of Star Wars under new leadership with The Force Awakens, which was in fact an exceptional film, I challenge anybody to go back and actually truly analyze the academic merits of that film in terms of production, in terms of screenwriting, in terms of acting. That movie was a success. It also was a success in relaunching Star Wars and introducing it to a new generation. It was a film that was meant to relaunch Star Wars and expose the franchise to new audiences and introduce new faces to old audiences. And now that the table has been set, we're finally going to get to eat. At least that's what we're hoping, right?
Yeah.
We finally get to eat with The Last Jedi finally making its debut. We went through the prologue with Force Awakens, having JJ move all those parts, all those pieces into place, getting things ready for the real meat of the story that, again, is The Last Jedi. The table is set. We should be picking up those forks, picking up those knives, and just digging in and eating. The film was written, as I was saying, by Rian Johnson, who, by the way, is a Sundance alumni from his amazing film Brick. So kudos to Kathleen Kennedy for thinking ahead and wanting to bring somebody on with the type of filmmaking know-how that Rian Johnson has. The guy is a filmmaking guru in his own right. So all the pieces, when you look at how they set it up with Force Awakens, relaunching the series successfully, with JJ putting the right pieces in place. As I was saying, the table is set. Then you have Rian Johnson coming in to direct, someone with a lot of accolades under his belt, some fantastic achievements. The table is set. You have all the pieces in place to have a fantastic sequel and second installment into a new Star Wars franchise. In many ways, this film had even more expectations than The Force Awakens. The Last Jedi has been positioned through various interviews and marketing promos as the Empire Strikes Back of this new trilogy.
And that's a lot to put on one movie's shoulders.
It really was. And again, the reason why I feel like there was a lot of expectations on The Last Jedi was because of the way it was marketed by everybody, including, of course, Disney, Lucasfilm, Kathleen Kennedy, and even more so than Force Awakens. And I know that's a ballsy statement, but The Force Awakens, I don't think anybody knew what to expect. It was something entirely different. It was a flash forwarding, 30 plus years into the future of Star Wars. I don't think anybody understood anything about the world, what happened, what went down, where are all our current characters at, our character favorites. We didn't know. So in a lot of ways, we were going in completely unadulterated. We had no idea what to expect. However, after The Force Awakens laid that groundwork, we then created expectations for the sequel. Would you agree?
Oh no, absolutely. That was the thing about why I say The Force Awakens is still better than The Last Jedi, is because The Force Awakens set the table, just like what you said. Now the question became, would The Last Jedi live up to the hype? And I just feel that we set it at such a high bar. That was tough for the film to get there.
Yeah, I mean, because everything we heard, it was going to be The Empire Strikes Back of the new trilogy, i.e., darker tone, more serious, a movie that will literally push, the underlining mythology, world building. Expose us to new ideas and Star Wars concepts that would eventually join the canon archives. And I have to say, in this regard, be prepared to be greatly disappointed. Despite the many fun moments, the result is a failure to fully commit to anything. Something we keep seeing more and more with big budget films. And I'm not to say the movie isn't highly entertaining, because it absolutely is. And it will appease the mainstream audiences and even the mainstream bulk of the Star Wars fans as well. But there is a recent trend in Hollywood within the cinema. And when I say cinema, I'm going to use that word very loosely. I'm talking more about the tentpole films. And it would seem like studios are afraid to go there. They're afraid to fully commit. They want to slow things down, to world build, to fully develop our surroundings and our characters. It's the constant jokes every 5 to 10 minutes has become a bane to my movie experience. I didn't go in to see comedies, and I'm not talking about Star Wars specifically. I didn't go in to see a comedy. However, that's what we seem to be getting more and more now, as more and more studios create these movies. And in particular, the Marvel franchise, what we get is a string of jokes. And that's what we get as our movie. The world of Star Wars is so rich, visceral, dark, mysterious. Why must we dilute it with jokes? Now, again, don't get me wrong. Star Wars has always been a swashbuckling, serial good time with downright silly antics at times.
Yeah. And that's the thing is like the silly antics. Yes. But if you overplay it, then it becomes a comedy.
Right.
And that's where you jump genres, and it's kind of like, I'm with you. I actually feel that a lot of blockbuster films always have to have like this interjection of comedy or like a lot of writers feel I have to make the audience breathe in my story. So let's throw this comedic joke right out there.
Yeah.
And just everyone can exhale. Okay, here we go again. And comedy is kind of like it's almost a crutch. It's becoming a crutch for a lot of movies now.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely is. And I get it. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, the studios, David, spend millions of dollars a year strategizing and figuring out what audiences want to currently see. What is going to whet their appetites? What is the current palette of the mainstream? Census groups, questionnaires, dry runs for screenings. These are things that studios do so they can get inside the minds of the current state of the audience. So obviously they get it. Obviously they know what most of the audiences want to see. So there's a reason why we're seeing it. I don't think it's just them doing what they want. I feel like there is a strategy and there's a method to their madness. And getting back to the Star Wars and their silly antics just for a moment, Star Wars has always had silly antics and good times, but the good time and the lighthearted nature of some of the scenes in Star Wars always led to a crucial narrative moment.
And it was well timed.
And a lot of what we saw in The Last Jedi felt like filler.
Yes.
This movie appears to be nothing more than a bridge to get to episode 9. And it sounds like I might be getting negative, and just bear with me because I'm not negative. This is me breaking down what the movie amounts to. Does it make it a bad movie? No. And I'm saying that right now. It does not make it a bad movie. However, this is me breaking it down
as a film critic.
Say what you want about George Lucas, David. Okay, and the clunky, uneven prequels. Okay, again, that's I'm paraphrasing things I've heard from other people, okay? Because I don't agree with that.
Yeah.
However, they covered a ton of story ground. Say what you want about Phantom Menace. Say what you want about Attack of the Clones. Say what you want about Revenge of the Sith. And that there's a solid, well-developed concept. And each movie covers a ton of ground, a ton of narrative. Now, Tony mentioned, David, your brother, actually. Yeah. He asked me last night when we were doing a show in the studio, he asked me what I thought about Star Wars, and I kind of gave him my non-spoiler review. And he said something that I didn't agree with at first, and then as I thought about it, and as we started discussing, as I started working on my show notes for today's show, he mentioned or asked, if this movie would have been better, will it have better playability later? Meaning, once the trilogy is complete. And I would actually probably agree with that assessment now. I feel like once we have a complete story, I don't think any of these problems we're discussing will actually amount to much. As long as the third movie has a lot of story and depth. Again, this is a bridge. This is a bridge to get someplace.
Yes. I can agree with that. That's why I'm very hesitant to really.
Are you disagreeing with me on this? You're kind of quiet. So I mean, you seem to be agreeing with me, right?
I am agreeing with you to this point because it's really difficult for me to separate the fanboy in me and say, no, this is a great film. It's Star Wars. How can we love it? Oh my God. What is wrong with me?
Maury.
I have to go get myself psychologically checked. But
not really, no.
I'll be honest with you, the last couple of days has been really tough because I even went to my work and a couple of my coworkers know that I'm part of the press.
Right.
They know that I went to go see a private screening. And without giving any spoilers, I gave them my assessment of it. And they were like going, that doesn't sound very great. I'm like going, well, it's a good movie. What do you want me to say?
Yeah.
What do you want me to say?
And honestly, Dave, maybe part of the issue has to do with the fact that this is the first Star Wars movie to ever take place immediately after the events of a previous film.
Yes.
Before, we've always had years separating the storylines, whereas this was literally bookended, butted up to the ending of Force Awakens. In fact, I mean, this is not a spoiler because in the previews, in fact, we actually see the entire Force Awakens ending that leads up to Luke Skywalker's reveal. So because of that, I feel like we get a movie that feels more like an episode of television rather than a complete film and all the bells and whistles that comes with that.
Yes. That is, you hit it on the head. It feels like a television show.
It feels like episodic television, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You hit it on the head because it's kind of like, without going into any spoilers or anything, one of the things that I found really jarring about this was the whole let's start from where we left off.
Yeah.
And just like what we alluded to, I mean, in the past, movies have always been separated with some time for us to actually kind of slowly walk into the movie. No, let's drop them right in. That's what they do. That's what they do on a television show. You brought it up and I didn't think about it, but I think that is one of the problems I have with this sequel of Star Wars is the fact that I went to the movie theater wanting to watch a movie.
Yeah.
Not a television show.
And that's why I'm wondering if your brother's comments will prove true later. And ultimately, isn't that what ultimately matters, is the playability with a movie like, now, if we're talking about, 10 things I hate about you, those types of movies don't have an extended shelf life. There's usually an expiration of, 4 or 5 years. And then after that, the movie is forever forgotten in the bowels of stupidity. Okay. But
yes.
Movies like this are never forgotten. They are remembered.
They're iconic.
And I'm wondering if a movie like this will have better playability 3 or 4 years down the road when the movie and when the trilogy is complete and the entire package is out there and the story is done. I feel like it may just do that. I think you know what? I'm getting too much into the Star Wars fan aspect. Let me backtrack and get out of that real fast.
I sensed it. I
didn't want to go there. I'm trying to keep this more objective. So let's get back on track, starting with this. Now,
okay.
There was so much going on in this film due to the ensemble cast that we've been talking about, Dave.
Yes.
This is something that you and I have been discussing for about 2 or 3 months now. Maybe 6 months now since it was revealed that there's going to be a much bigger cast. And one thing I specifically mentioned to you is that for the most part, Star Wars films have always revolved around one person with a few supporting cast members.
Yes.
The original trilogy was all about Luke and Darth Vader. And Han Solo and Princess Leia had their own little narrative arcs, but their narrative arcs amounted to supporting and helping propel Luke Skywalker's story forward. They weren't separate strands of narrative doing their own thing. With the prequels, you can say the exact same thing about Anakin and Obi-Wan. For the most part, the story was about Anakin. And then Obi-Wan's story started to come forward as well, and they became almost like a dual narrative where their stories separated and then came back together by the end.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it was not an ensemble cast. You had a large cast, but they were background. They were there to support our leads and help propel the main story. With this movie, you get something very, very different. And it's the fact that we had multiple narratives and multiple arcs, and they were not supporting roles. They were actually leads. And I feel like that's the problem. When Rian Johnson stopped focusing on the unimportant aspects of our story, things were interesting. Rey, Kylo, Luke, Princess Leia, everything about these four and their story was absolutely fucking amazing.
Gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous.
Dude, tear worthy.
Yes, absolutely.
Just everything about them. I'm getting chills as I'm saying it. And this is not me as a Star Wars fan. This is me as a writer saying their stories and the way they innovated and connected. It was absolutely perfect. It was so good. That was the story, and that should have remained the story. Instead, we get a lot of filler antics with needless and pointless characters. And I've never said that before in Star Wars. And this is me being objective. Even Jar Jar. Let's quit hating on Jar Jar for a second. Jar Jar had a purpose. He had a purpose. And when his purpose was done, guess what? He was no longer in the movie.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, we already know George Lucas didn't put him away because he was listening to people. George Lucas doesn't listen to anybody.
Yeah.
He doesn't give a shit what you say.
Jar Jar had to meet what George Lucas felt was where he needed to go.
And the end of his story.
And the end of his story.
Everybody had a point in previous Star Wars movies. Even in Force Awakens, everybody had their role. Finn and Rey were the eyes and ears of the new audience. It's the way, just so expertly done, the way you introduce new audiences to the show is through new faces. And as they're learning about the world and the Force and Luke Skywalker and Han Solo and the war between the rebellion and the Empire, as they're learning about these things that they thought were fantasy, the audience who may never have watched Star Wars before is also learning. There was a point to the characters. Instead, we get a lot of, as I was saying, filler antics with a lot of pointless character arcs. I mean, Finn completely was squandered. He had a purpose last movie. This time, he literally did nothing.
Yes.
Which is a shame because John Boyega is truly an exceptional actor.
Oh, yeah.
That guy can act his ass off. He is so good. And every time he's on screen, I'm going to go on a limb here. He is very Harrison Fordish. And it makes a lot of sense now how they paired him and Harrison Ford up at the end of Force Awakens. Because in a lot of ways, he has that swagger, that casual, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to look good while I'm doing it type of thing. He's so good. And every scene he was in Last Jedi is good. But it amounts to nothing.
To nothing. To absolutely nothing. And the thing that I took away from that, especially when you take a look at like Rian Johnson as the director, when you look at this as a director's piece, you see Rian Johnson's strength when he was focused on the aspects that we were discussing.
The actual story.
The actual story. The other times, it's almost kind of like he basically said, okay, go ahead, do your thing. I gotta get the footage out. I gotta get this shot here.
Yeah.
And there's nothing special about it. I just gotta get this here because this needs to go here because it's in the script.
I would even go as far as saying that Rian Johnson's story was Rey, Kylo, Luke, and Princess Leia, and the rest of the nonsense was Lucasfilm and Disney saying, hey, we got to dress this up differently for the mainstream. We got to give them what they want.
That's how I felt.
We got to sell tickets and put asses in the seats. So let's make this, just before you guys get too serious in the story, let's go ahead and do some antics that don't matter.
And like, let's take characters that honestly, a lot of the side characters suffered in this movie.
They sucked.
They suffered.
They sucked. I'm just going to say it, David.
Well, no. I agree with you that they sucked, but I think that they could have been done so much better.
I honestly feel like the character that they paired Finn up with was probably one of the worst characters we've ever seen in Star Wars. And I'm hoping she's not in the next movie. Rose Tico. The character, the girl that was paired, just horrible. I think she, oh my God. I don't want to turn into a troll. I'm about to turn into a Star Wars troll, and I don't want to do that. So let's back up and get objective again. Okay. Now, despite all of that, the movie is tracking well. It has the highest rating than any other Star Wars film to date in terms of Rotten Tomato ratings, Google ratings. So obviously Lucasfilm, Kathleen Kennedy, and Rian Johnson have their pulse on the mainstream, and they know what audiences, for the most part, want to see. As I was saying, these companies spend upwards of millions to figure out what the trends are and what the current appetite is for audiences. Unfortunately, what audiences want to see doesn't equal exceptional work. Just look at some of the top tentpole films today and the latest Marvel films, as I was saying, that are absolutely beloved, and yet all they've become is a string of jokes with zero real emotional development of our heroes. And I'm really hoping that Star Wars does not follow suit and follow the path that Marvel has become. Because if that happens, dude, I will no longer be objective.
You'll just be harsh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So on that, let's get our final thoughts off before we go to our first break and come back with spoilers. Let's close this half of the show out with our final thoughts, Dave. Go ahead. You can go first.
Okay, my final thoughts on The Last Jedi. It's been a while to actually think about it, but I honestly think that the movie's good. It's very worth its place in the Star Wars mythos. It doesn't deserve to be hated or anything, or I even think it doesn't deserve to be trolled at all. I think
Very bad.
I think that the performances by the Luke Skywalker storyline characters, the Princess Leia, I thought Kylo Ren's performance, I thought Adam Driver did a fantastic job with a character that originally I thought was going to be very one-dimensional. But in this one, we're getting a lot of twisted. He's playing Kylo Ren very well.
Adam Driver is my favorite thing about the new era of Star Wars.
Yeah.
He is so good.
I think Adam Driver has really taken a character I thought was going to be one-dimensional, but because of his acting and how he's portraying and getting the emotion out of this character, I think has been a really bright spot in the movie. I thought Daisy Ridley did a fantastic job playing Rey. Seeing Mark Hamill again was fantastic. My fanboy, well, the fanboy in me just like wanted to cry out in happiness with his performance and everything. I will say this, that basically there were one or two occasions that basically I think he kind of like took a step back as Luke Skywalker and became Mark Hamill.
Yeah, and that might just be, the fact that Mark Hamill has grown as an actor so much, and he was an average actor in the 70s, and now he's a very talented actor. This guy
he's
has
an experienced actor.
Yes, and he's honed his craft, and he's very, very good at what he does.
I mean, if you see it, he can do that through his animation and his voice acting work.
Yeah.
And he's fantastic at it. The other cast, just like you, I liked Finn's scenes, but I honestly feel that Finn, John Boyega, and Oscar Isaacs, both, I think they were squandered in this film. I think that there was so much they could have done with these characters, and especially with these actors, because both actors are very charismatic on screen, that I think that it was a bit of a waste for these two characters. I do feel that the character of Rose was kind of the weak link of the ensemble cast. And overall, the writing and direction of Rian Johnson was good. It was fair. He didn't do a terrible job, but I am excited to see what J.J. Abrams is going to do now.
Yeah. Yep. All right, so what grade do you give it? Give it a grade. Come on.
I'm going to give this Star Wars movie a B.
Okay. All right, so my final thoughts. This movie is the longest and least essential chapter in the entire series. That's the absolute sad truth. When I say least essential, you can almost not even watch it, and depending on what they do in the next movie, you probably won't miss a thing. The Last Jedi feels like the denouement of The Force Awakens. It almost feels as if you could have taken all of the rich portion of the story from Last Jedi, dealing with Kylo, Luke, Princess Leia, taken that story, which is maybe 35, 40 minutes, and put it at the end of The Force Awakens, and it would have been one complete movie. And if you can do that, if you can cut away all the nonsense and say, hey, there's really only 45 minutes of story that mattered to Star Wars, then I feel like that's not a good thing. So The Last Jedi is a fun movie and possibly more entertaining than The Force Awakens. However, academically speaking, The Force Awakens is a far better film.
Yes.
All right, so that means, David, it is time to go to the spoiler zone. Everybody get the hell out.
Get the hell out.
Looky, Senator. Decent Jedi arriving. Excuse me. Well, that smells stinkerwith.
All right, so let's get into this. It's time to get into let's take off our critic hats. And let's put on our Jedi robes.
Oh, thank God.
All right. So spoiler time. The strength and the heart of this movie, as I was saying, is Rey, Kylo Ren, Luke, and Leia. Every moment Rian took us to them, nothing else mattered. Forget the nonsense. Forget the back noise, because whenever they were on screen, they owned it.
Whenever they were near the screen too, because some of the scenes that basically were like what we discussed were the humor scenes. One of the humor scenes that took place during the Rey and Luke's training, actually was really good.
Yeah,
because it made you pay attention to the screen,
absolutely,
and not what was going on with Chewie and the Porgs.
Yeah, I mean, they are Star Wars. They are Star Wars. Rey, Kylo Ren, they are the representation of everything Star Wars was introduced to us way back in the 70s with the first movie. They are that. Our hopes and dreams as Star Wars fans, this is them. They are the manifestation of what we want in Star Wars. The pain of Kylo Ren is just so astoundingly complicated. And there is something tragically beautiful about it. I mean, to find out what turned him to the dark side is utterly heartbreaking. And I feel like that was the biggest takeaway of this entire movie, is the fact that Luke Skywalker is the one that pushed Kylo to the dark side, not because of any ill intent, but because out of fear. Luke slipped. He made a mistake as a Jedi master and thought he was making the right decision. He felt the evilness, the darkness within Kylo, and he thought just for a split second, he wasn't going to go through with it, but he thought just for a split second, he should end Kylo's life. And because of that split second moment, Kylo was pushed emotionally, and he realized he was unwanted. And there's nothing worse, David, than being the person. Can you imagine being that person and your uncle has no faith in you as a person, so much so that he was contemplating killing you?
Yeah.
That is fucking dark.
And the thing is, it's like it doesn't excuse Kylo Ren's choices.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't. But you get it. That's the thing I loved about Adam Driver's portrayal of Kylo Ren in this, is kind of like you do get that sense that, yeah, Kylo Ren made bad decisions, but is it okay to basically kill the kid? Is it okay to basically judge the kid because of feelings that you got?
But remember where Luke's coming from. Luke already suffers from a form of white guilt, and I have no other way to say this, but his father single-handedly destroyed a galaxy. So imagine having that type of pressure on your shoulders.
Well, that was the thing that I really dug in the scene where Luke tells Rey about Darth Sidious.
Yeah, let's not jump ahead too much.
Let's not jump ahead too much, but the way they portrayed Luke was just so elegant.
Yeah.
When you take it to the grand scheme of like Luke just found out, or Luke this whole time in all his training learns the whole truth of what happened in the Attack of the Clone Saga.
Yeah. And that's also a great takeaway as a Star Wars fan, is it feels good to know that Luke Skywalker is in the know finally. Because we always wonder, even though it's no way, obviously we know how these movies were made, the prequels were made afterwards. So, however, there's a part of us that gets meta that says, we want Luke to acknowledge that the prequels happened. And when he says, like what you said about Darth Sidious, and he tells Rey of the failure of the Jedi and how all this transpired under their noses, and that they shouldn't have any type of control over the universe. They couldn't even save the universe. They didn't even know what was in front of them. I mean, you can feel and understand Luke's issues and the pressure that he's under, but also it gives us that little tidbit as fans of, yeah, Luke's in the know.
Yeah, Luke's in the know.
Yeah, I did like that part a lot.
The thing I liked about it is, especially in that scene where he Lily, he doesn't even come out and say his father. His father was one, even though we know he knows it's his father, but he refers to his father as it was a Jedi that killed everybody.
Yeah.
And I'm like going, Luke is still in almost like in guilt and denial.
Well, absolutely. I mean, and that's, again, it's so tragedy. It's so tragic and it's so Skywalker. And I'm glad they stuck to this.
Yeah.
Because Luke shutting himself off to the Force, it was revealed that he shut himself off to the Force from the Force after he felt that he failed Kylo Ren. I mean, what a sad reveal. It's truly a Skywalker tragic story. It is consistent with Anakin. He made mistakes that would haunt him until his death. And it may not be a mistake like destroying the universe and selling your soul so you can selfishly cling to the life of your wife or save your wife's life to the point to where you rather destroy and kill countless of other people, including younglings. But Luke also made a very similar Skywalker mistake. It wasn't necessarily selfish. However, it was a decision that ended regretfully in tragedy that would in fact engulf the galaxy as well by way of Kylo Ren.
And if you think about the irony of it all is the fact that Luke made a decision that was the opposite of his father. His father was a very selfish decision. Luke, he literally thought about the whole, to coin a phrase, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few.
Oh, come on. Don't cross streams.
No, this isn't cross extreme. I'm talking about, like Churchill and all the history, what history teaches us.
Yeah.
History teaches us that basically, well, if I'm going to kill one person to save 1,000 or 1,000,000, I'll kill the one person.
Yeah.
And in the end, it's like, it really made that, I thought that irony of that tragedy that Luke didn't want to make the same mistakes as his father, but in the end went the opposite direction and still made a mistake.
Yeah.
And he still basically, because of that extreme thought process, he makes the mistake that basically almost damns the universe still.
Right. And it's kind of that age-old question, Dave, of if you could go back in time, would you kill baby Hitler?
Yes.
And that's the exact scenario that Luke found himself in. Knowing what he knows, knowing that Darth Vader became the greatest threat to civilization, would you not take the appropriate action, or at least feel obligated to take the appropriate action if you sensed the raw talent Kylo had, and then you sensed the darkness within him as well? I mean, wouldn't any person with that type of experience like Luke has, and knowing what he knows about his father and what's in their blood and how they all have the inclinations for power and evilness and the lust for control, would you not take similar steps as Luke, contemplating that I should end this before it gets any worse? I mean, talk about Shakespearean as fuck.
And dude, take this, ramp it up, because a lot of people would normally say, yeah, I'll kill baby Hitler because it's Hitler. Okay, let's take this another step. Let's ramp it up even further and say that child that you're killing is your child. It's your kid. It's your son. It's your daughter. It's your blood that you have to kill. It harkens back to basically biblical tales like Abraham and taking his son up into the mountain to kill because God tells him to. And I'm like going, that really takes that mentality that I think not a lot of people talk about, because everyone kind of tosses it aside and says, yeah, I'd kill one person to save thousands. Yeah, it's easy. It's not so easy when you think of all the other implications behind it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's dark, man.
It's dark.
It's really dark. And I mean, just look at Luke's mini arc he had. I mean, Luke having to face Kylo and that Zen way he had to battle Kylo. He had to face his mistake. He had to face his foe. It's so Jedi. It's so George Lucas Jedi.
It's very samurai-ish.
It's just so good. You know, just like the setup between Luke and Darth Vader and having to face his father. Only then will he become a Jedi. And same thing now. 30 plus years later, Luke is confronted with a similar situation, having to face Kylo Ren. And dude, the Zen way he battled Kylo was more than I had expected. And quite honestly, I was shocked and amazed, and I think I might have jizzed my pants. I mean, dude,
that was one of the biggest bright spots of the movie.
Jeez, dude. I mean, you always, and the reason why I was so excited for it is because it completely caught me off guard. I have not been caught off guard for any scene or ending fight scene in Star Wars since Yoda popped in Attack of the Clones. And you're like, what the fuck just happened? And that's the feeling I had when Luke zenned his way to another planet. I mean, Jesus. And what a great way to do it. First off, it shows you in such a very easy and simple way how truly powerful Luke is. No run-of-the-mill Jedi Knight could do what he did.
No. If you even look at like in the past with Obi-Wan and Yoda, especially Yoda, when they show up in a different planet or they talk to someone, you never see their body.
Yeah.
And they always have that blue, hazy spirit look to them. Luke literally projected himself.
Yeah.
Doctor Strange projected himself.
Man.
Right to the fight.
And
he could actually affect people.
Yeah. And
he could touch people.
And a part of me wanted that lightsaber ending. And then I was like, you know what? This is the way Luke had to go out. He had to go out this way. This is the only way to show his growth.
Yes.
Because just like Obi-Wan in Rebels and his conflict with Darth Maul and how it was wrapped up was a very simple ending. It shows Obi-Wan's ability and how much he grew. And it showed how Darth Maul has not grown and how he is the same person he was, 15, 20 years ago. And in the same way, they're doing the same thing with Kylo Ren. Kylo has not grown.
Yeah.
Since he left Luke.
He's still lashing out. He's still that little boy that lashed out.
Right. And Luke has become something entirely different. It was a thing of dreams, dude, for a Star Wars fan. Would you agree?
Oh, no, absolutely.
I think I giggled. I'm not sure, Dave. Maybe you can confirm. But I think what happened, I was like, I think I looked at you, right?
Yeah.
Which I don't look at people when I'm watching movies ever. But I think I might have looked at you. I'm like, what the fuck just happened?
No, that's what you said. It was like,
did I actually say that?
Yeah. What the fuck? And I was like going, yeah, we just saw Luke at his peak.
Oh my God, dude,
it was like,
it's so good.
I told you when we first saw this, when we were getting set to see the movie, and we were sitting there, one of the things I told you that is one of my expectations was to see Luke fight.
Yep.
And I was like, going,
it wasn't what we thought, but dude,
it wasn't what we thought, but when you look at it, oh my God, this is what he needed to become.
Yeah.
Because like seeing Luke just like literally flip around and start doing the Yoda thing and start fighting, yeah, it would have been cool, but there's no meaning to it.
Right. Exactly, dude.
There's no substance to it.
Spot on. You're exactly right. Because this is what, in order to give Luke the ending and the story he needed, this had to happen.
Yeah. When I looked at, when I thought about it, I'm like going, anybody who basically says Luke is not the most powerful Jedi, you need to actually be really thinking really hard.
Yeah.
Because you're not thinking, I'm sorry, you're very narrow-minded and you're very Neanderthal. You're very simplistic minded. Sorry. That's just how I'm going to look at people who tell me that fight was not good.
Yeah.
That fight was excellent because the substance behind it matched what we needed to see out of Luke.
Yeah, and Luke and Yoda's discourse before Luke's arc would finally resolve, The fact that Yoda popped.
Oh, I love that scene. Dude.
Yoda popped in at the right time for the story. It not only did it serve.
That was the scene I looked at you and I was like giggling.
Yeah, dude. I mean, everybody, I think in the theater was like, "Oh shit!" I think the guy next to us was like, "What the fuck?" I think he said that.
Yeah, no, the guy was sitting right next to me. I just hear, we see the back of Yoda's head, and all of a sudden he goes, "Oh, what the fuck?"
Yeah,
and I'm like going,
dude.
"Oh crap!"
And I mean, forget the fan service moment for a minute because it was great, but it wasn't just fan service. It meant
something.
It meant a lot because it was a great way to bookend Luke's life and help him come to the right decision that he had to make. Will he help? Will he remain on the outsides and just look in as everything falls apart around him because he's living in shame? Or will he take action? And rather than him finally coming to his senses and saying, yep, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and show up and do my job as a Jedi. What had to happen? He had to come and be smacked around by his old master. I mean, dude, it was so perfect. It was so good. And it was like when Yoda popped up and the relationship he immediately had with Skywalker was like they didn't even skip a beat. Like it is not like 30 years had passed. It was like we were immediately transported back to Dagobah, and he's on his shoulders making fun of him and prodding him and being antagonistic to him or antagonizing him. It was great.
And I liked that they used Yoda there because
it was the best way you could have utilized him.
It's the best way you could have used Yoda because, like, at the end of the day, when you take a look at Luke, after you watch Last Jedi and you're watching Last Jedi, when you take a look at Luke, Luke is supposed to be a teacher, and he's supposed to teach this girl, and like, I can understand Yoda kind of like giving him a lecture about basically being a teacher is more than just passing on your knowledge. It's about watching them grow and letting them grow.
Yeah,
and I dug that in the very end where he has that kind of last, I guess you could say Yoda's last lesson to Luke.
Yeah.
And it's like all of a sudden, Luke is reverted back to the Luke Skywalker that we saw, just like what you said, Dagobah, where he's lost.
Yeah.
And he's confused.
He was lost and confused.
And like Yoda's like going, he smacks him around and basically kind of looks at him and says, "You're an idiot. You're impulsive. This is who you are, but this is what you have to do. Because of this is who you are."
And ultimately, like I said, this is one of the well-written aspects of The Last Jedi because Luke had that mini hero's journey arc. And that's something that I talk a lot about in our shows where we break down TV shows and movies. And it's a writing element that's a part of the fantasy epics where you have the hero's journey and they always refuse the call. They don't want to be a part of this. They want to go back to their life. Frodo, I want to be on the Shire with my family. Don't ask me to do this. Luke Skywalker, I want to stay here and be a farmer. Let someone else worry about that. I'll take you as far as Anchorhead, but after that, you're on your own. This isn't me. You always have the hero refuses to join the fight. And that's exactly what they did with Luke in this movie as well. He had his own little hero's journey arc. He refused the call to action. He went through all the little motions to where he finally decided it's time and go fight. And that was the best part. And I have no complaints when it comes to Luke. I feel like everything they wrote for him was fitting for Star Wars. It was fitting for Luke. And then the beautiful, and I do say beautiful, way they ended his story.
Oh, dude.
I mean, how poetic was it that instead of the suns rising, the two suns rising, we get the two suns setting. And then Luke dies. I mean, God damn it, dude. I think I cried. It was so good.
I literally, that was the one time in the movie I knew that Last Jedi was good because it made me feel emotional. And that scene, dude, I literally wanted to cry because you see Luke, he did his job. He's so tired. He's so beat.
Well, the Zen thing, which I thought was cool, is what killed him.
Yeah. And he sits there and the last thing he sees through everything, he still finds this strength to just sit there and just watch the twin suns. And you hear the binary sunset playing in the background. I literally wanted to cry.
Yeah, it was good, man.
Next to you, but I'm like going, I don't want to be a bitch.
Yeah.
Please don't make me.
It was good. I have no complaints with Luke's story whatsoever.
Luke's story was fantastic.
I mean,
the conclusion of it was poetic.
And as a Star Wars fan, I do want more. I mean, I'm not satisfied. I'm like, why? Why must you go so soon?
Yeah,
but it was good. It was a great way. It was good how they executed it. I felt like the way they executed Luke's storyline and the conclusion of his story, which, by the way, I don't think is his end. I'm sure we'll see. I don't think so. I'm sure we'll see him as a Force spirit. The fact that he's so powerful. I mean, this guy can probably do anything at this point. And that's another thing. To show how strong Luke has become, as a little preview before he did his Zen maneuver, was the fact that Yoda was almost there. It wasn't the usual Force ghost. And if you know anything about Star Wars canon, it always starts off as a voice as you're getting stronger, like Luke, like Obi-Wan when he was talking to Luke. I'm talking about Luke specifically right now. When Obi-Wan first died, Luke couldn't see him. He heard him. Then at the beginning of Empire, he could barely see an image of him in the snow. By the end of Empire, he could see him more clearly because he had gone through a lot more training. And now that he's the ultimate Jedi Master, he can actually see Yoda so well that there's barely any blue on him. There's just little trace highlights around his ears and his arms.
Yeah.
And not to mention, you realize that's the old Yoda, right? They did not CGI him.
Nope.
This is Phantom Menace and original trilogy Yoda. It was the puppet.
It was the puppet.
And it looked so good. So good. Why use CGI? Obviously, they need CGI for the action sequences, but so I get why they did it. But man, going back to old Yoda, it just, everything about it felt so good and felt so much like Star Wars. I really, really enjoyed it. Let's move over to Rey a bit. And because we kind of skipped past Kylo, we didn't finish the discussion on him. But this is also where the writing was solid. Connecting Rey to Kylo and allowing them to grow together through a connection in the Force. I felt like that was a very smart move on Rian Johnson's part. It was a way to craft their story and help them develop a very intimate connection that allowed them to understand each other, and it progressed their story together.
And it added to that mystery. It added to the mystery. By the end of it, we were left wondering why. Because just like what Kylo Ren was wondering, why can I see you? Why are you haunting me? And like the same thing with Rey. Rey was wondering, why can I see you and hear you? It doesn't make sense.
It was good. It served the story purpose, and it also served for the progression of character development, and it helped us believe what we needed to believe throughout the movie, which was Kylo and Rey could be friends. They could be friends. And what does this mean? Are they making some type of unholy alliance? And it helped build up that suspense towards the end of the movie, where we would be, where that question would come up. Would Kylo join Rey? Would Rey join Kylo? And if they didn't do that and build the trust between them, it would never have worked. That entire question of who's going to join who would never have worked. We would never would have had that suspense. There would be no point to the scene in front of Snoke. So that was another smart decision. As I was saying, Dave, in our review objective discussion, anything dealing with Luke, Rey, and Kylo was very well developed and very well done. And this is just more of it. We learned more about Rey's past, but not really. We know that there is something potentially there. The idea I got that there was potential for darkness. There was a dark side cave that was calling to her, and it was very different than Luke's dark side cave. It was something that knew her. She knew it. She mentioned she's seen this place in her dreams. She was familiar with the place. So they alluded to a bigger mystery. Even Luke was shocked by the amount of power she possessed and how the cave, or this underground water cave, whatever, even he was shocked and disturbed by how it was calling to her. It bothered him. It's the biggest reason why he didn't want to train her, because he didn't understand who she was. Are they going to connect this to the old prophecy of the Force? Because this is where my nerdism starts taking over. They mentioned the balance various times, and we already know it's canon. They talked about it in Rebels.
Yes.
The place where the God of the Force resides and the brother and the sister. Is this what they're building? Is this the new version of them? Or have they been reborn? There is definitely a connection between Kylo and Rey, and it's more than just what Snoke was doing to manipulate them,
yes,
as we found out. There is a connection there. She is a bit of a not Luke Skywalker. She's a bit of an Anakin. She's a puzzle, an enigma. Not an enigma. What's the word I'm looking for? Not an abomination. She's an anomaly. She seems to be an anomaly, much like Anakin. Nobody knows where she came from, how she became so strong. And there's a reason behind that. There's got to be a reason behind that, especially if you start looking and reading into some of the subtext as well as the dialogue. I mean, Snoke specifically says, we should have known, I'm paraphrasing, we should have known, as you rise in your power in the dark side, Kylo, because of the balance, somebody would rise just as strong with the light.
And I'm glad you brought that up.
Because that was the biggest takeaway.
That was my biggest takeaway in that scene with Snoke, was the fact that they're bringing up a new prophecy. If you think about it,
or are they connecting it to an old one that's never found its way into Star Wars?
Yes.
Or Star Wars movies.
Yes.
Clone Wars, yes.
Clone Wars, it was there. Rebels, it's there.
But we've never seen it in the movie. So are they bringing it forward? Are they taking this canon up a notch? I feel like it would be completely awesome. There has to be something, because outside of that, we didn't get any answers on Rey. We got more mystery. But there's got to be something there. You don't build up Kylo as being this anomaly. You don't build up Rey as being this anomaly and them rising together due to the balance that's needed within the Force. There's got to be something more than that. That can't just be a throwaway line of exposition. Yes, we can believe Kylo ran a bit more because he's from the bloodline of the Skywalker, so it's a little bit more, it's easier to believe and swallow as a viewer. However, with Rey, we are left with a mystery. Why is she so strong? Not just Force sensitive, strong. Why was there familiarity with that island, specifically the Dark Cave? What was the purpose of that avant-garde scene when she confronted herself, much like Luke confronted himself and Empire? There's a lot of questions there, and I really liked it. I wish we got a little bit more. However, I feel like they're going in the right direction with the mystery, because we have to have a what the fuck moment. You can't just shrug it off and say, it's nothing important. You cannot do more training. You will need Obi-Wan. Like, how did she die? Oh, she lost the will to live. We can't have any of that bullshit.
No, we can't.
We have to have a what the fuck. There's got to be a justification as to why Rey is so powerful.
And you got to build it up to the third movie.
Yeah. So I'm okay that they didn't give us all the goods, but they continue to expand on that mystery. And that's the cool part about it. Princess Leia is fucking powerful, apparently.
Dude,
how cool.
That scene. Oh my God.
How cool was her resurrection?
Her resurrection was cool.
I mean, first off, part of me at first is like, oh, this is not going to end well. This is not good. Like, a part of me was like, that's a bad decision. But then I started thinking about it, because at first I didn't know if I liked it. And then I said, no, it has to happen. It has to happen. This is consistent with Jedi abilities. Number one, forget for a moment that she's a Skywalker. And we have to see her be a Skywalker. Just because you choose not to be trained as a Jedi doesn't mean you can walk away from the powers within you.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
The fact that she is an offspring of Vader she is just as powerful as the dude that zenned himself to fight Kylo Ren. So having her resurrect herself in space after she had already died, holy shit. I mean, what a great way to show us the power of the Skywalker bloodline, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That was the thing that I took away from that was like, number one, I was really hoping that they weren't going to write off Carrie Fisher.
You mean the Force aspect?
Yeah.
Or because she died and now let's just get rid of her?
That.
Yeah.
Because she's gone, we're going to write her out and everything else. And I didn't want that. So when that happened, I was like, oh my God, they're doing the one thing I don't want. But then they flipped it. And as I said, this was one of the twists in the movie that I absolutely was shocked at, because I didn't know they would go that route. I'm happy they went that route, because that showed that Leia is just as powerful as Luke, because at the end of the day, Leia is still Luke's sister. And the whole time at Return of the Jedi, the one thing I think all of us as fans have forgotten is Yoda basically told Obi-Wan, no, there's another. The other was Leia. Leia's just as powerful as Luke, and she can do amazing things. We never seen it. We never saw it in the original trilogy, but it's always been hinted at that basically Leia could actually be just as powerful, if not more powerful than Luke.
Yeah, and I'm glad we saw like a Jedi ability. You know, I know the originals and the story didn't really lend itself to the extraordinary abilities of Jedi, just because there were no Jedi. Luke wasn't trained as a Jedi. So the story didn't lend itself to see these extraordinary acts of the Jedi. The prequels were a different story altogether.
Yes.
And you could see those extraordinary abilities. And something that's very canon in Star Wars is it's at the very foundation of the Jedi Knights and the Force abilities is each Jedi has its own strengths and their own abilities. One may be able to be, zen themselves to another planet. One may be able to resurrect themselves. And how interesting, number one, Dave, and I hope this means something even bigger. What started this entire thing? I don't know if this was just a mistake, and I have to think it wasn't a mistake because, I mean, Rian Johnson is a Star Wars nut. Kathleen Kennedy has been around since day one. I mean, you can't make a mistake like this and shrug it off and be like, oh, well, it's just a coincidence. We didn't really mean to do this. But what turned Anakin Skywalker, David? He wanted to learn the ability to resurrect the dead.
Yes.
Only with the combined powers of Palpatine and Anakin could they find the way to stop the one you love from dying. And look what Princess Leia did. All on her own.
All on her own.
First off, how poetic is that? The fact that her mother died without being able to be brought back. And that's the very thing that caused Anakin's downward spiral into the darkness that then engulfed the entire universe into war. And a Jedi, or a non-Jedi, but obviously someone very strong in the Force, could resurrect themselves after death. That is really cool, and I hope they never put it in anything else. I do not want to see any Jedi be able to do that in a book, in a comic book, in a cartoon, in a TV show. Let that be specific to Skywalker, Princess Leia.
Yeah.
To show how powerful and unique they are.
Yeah.
It's so good.
And the thing is like when people basically see that power, I think they're just seeing it as basically she's invulnerable. No, it's more than that. She was blown up. She got sucked out into space. Normally, you're dead. Princess Leia was able to actually will herself back alive in space.
Yeah, I love it, man.
And pull herself back to the spacecraft.
Yeah, I think the only thing that caught me off guard was that there was nothing else to it after that. There was no surprise by any of the people around her. There was no questions. And it led me to believe a couple things. Has she showed this type of power before? And that this is just something that they're like, oh, this is her. This is what she can do.
I think that one is the one that I felt was off-putting.
Yeah, because no one said anything.
No one said anything.
No one said, oh my God, you died.
And the thing was, I was like thinking like, there should be some reaction to this, okay? Yeah, Poe was shocked by it.
Poe Dameron
was shocked by it. Everyone else was like, quick, just get her to the med bay. She's unconscious.
Yeah.
She just got blown up.
Now, the next bit is Snoke. And I have to say that he was a very big disappointment.
Thank you.
We learned absolutely nothing of his true intentions, his agenda, his past, the present. What was he all about? What made him so strong with the Force?
Yeah,
there was
right there
nothing.
That's what really irked me.
And this is
about Snoke.
And
look how powerful he was.
And this is where I get upset with Rian Johnson and this Star Wars story, this installment. I feel like every Star Wars movie, David, had world building aspects about them. We learned something. In Phantom Menace, we learned about the ways of the Force and what, even though we didn't like it, midichlorians, we learned something about the world. We learned about Anakin. We learned how the Jedi Council operated. We learned about the Sith, and there can only be two. In Attack of the Clones, we learned about how the clone army would in fact become something. We learned about Darth Sidious and Palpatine and his plan to manipulate the entire galaxy into war. We learned about the dark side. We learned about Anakin and his troubles. There was world building elements in Revenge of the Sith. We learned about the rise of the Sith and the fall of the Jedi and what happened. And you can do the same things in the original trilogy as well. You can go through that. Each movie had a development of story and not just character arcs, but world building elements, things that we learned that we didn't know. Look at Revenge of the Sith. In a very quick scene, that's my favorite scene of Revenge of the Sith, is when Palpatine is sitting in the opera with Anakin. And just with a few choice lines, we learn about Darth Plagueis and how his apprentice learned everything he could and then killed him. And we knew that he was talking about himself. We learned about the ways of the Sith. We learned about the hierarchy and how it works. We learned about what makes Darth Sidious tick. With this movie, we didn't get any of the world building. We didn't get any new mythology. Did we learn anything new about the world of Star Wars in this movie?
No.
And that's my biggest problem. And I think that comes down to one thing. It comes down to Snoke being written off way too soon. Snoke could have been your eyes and ears into world development. He could have been the way the audience learns about the current landscape of where everything's at and what his true purpose is, because we don't know anything. We don't know what happened to the Knights of Ren that we've heard about. Where are they at? Yeah. Well, we haven't heard about them. We haven't heard about Snoke's true intentions. Why is he not Sith? Are the Sith teachings lost? Did they die with Vader and Palpatine? Why is Snoke just dark side? Why is Kylo Ren just dark side? Why has he not sought out the teachings of the Sith? So we didn't learn anything. And I feel like that's the biggest missed opportunity with this movie, is the fact that there was no mythology. There was no expansion of what we know. It was what we do know, and here's our characters as they move along through the story.
And the thing was with Snoke, in the end of the day, all Snoke was almost like a stepping stone for Kylo Ren's story.
And yeah, right. And
that's it.
And I feel like they could have, I don't have a problem with that. He could still be a stepping stone for Kylo Ren because he is the focus and he's the story moving forward. And I get that, but they could have gone about it so many other ways. And the way they did it, don't get me wrong, the scene between all of them, Rey, Kylo, Snoke, all in that room in the chamber, was just, it's everything a Star Wars fan could want. Like with the fight with his guards and
that was awesome, and
all of that. However, not being able to see Snoke actually wield power in some way, I feel like he just didn't live up to the hype. I mean, even in Force Awakens, we learned more about Snoke. He wanted to bring about the complete desolation of the Jedi by killing Luke Skywalker. He was the leader of the First Order. He commanded Kylo Ren and the Knights of Ren. We learned so much more. There was a mystery there. I wish they would have at least kept him a mystery still, much like Darth Sidious was in the movies. In fact, I don't even think we saw him until the end of Attack of the Clones when Darth Tyrannus says, "The war has begun, my master." You could even done something like that where Snoke is only in it for 3 or 4 minutes as a way to world build and to expand our knowledge of what's going on, and then get rid of him if you need to in the third movie.
That's why I was very disappointed that he went, but now I'm like going, where are they going to go now? Because in my opinion,
that's how the whole movie feels. Like the movie almost felt like an ending. Like, well, what happens now? There is literally no rebellion and there's literally no First Order. So is it going to be a battle, a more intimate story between Kylo and Rey, and the war is not really going to be a thing since there is none?
There is none now. And the thing is, the rebellion survived, but there's only like a handful of them. And the thing that I took away from that, no one came to rescue them. That was the big thing that they pointed out in the very end, that no one from the Outer Rim, no one from the other galaxies came to their aid. That tells me right there that basically the rebellion's dead. There is no rebellion now, because it's only this handful of people that basically are going to try to fight the good fight. And then you have the removal of Snoke, and I'm like going, well, the First Order is pretty much down to Kylo Ren and General Hux, who's an idiot now, because for some strange reason they made the one other character that I thought that was going to be really interesting into comedy relief. And where do you go now with the First Order? Because I can't take the First Order seriously.
Yeah, we shall see. They definitely kind of ended things, and maybe that's the point. Maybe they want to clear the pieces off the board.
Clear the deck.
Yeah, and get things ready for the final chapter. But I feel like there's a lot of ground to cover for us to have a complete story. I almost feel, David, that we need time to pass. Like, hopefully the next movie does not pick up immediately after. Maybe 3 or 4 years should go by so we can have
some
some
smart thing to do.
Yeah, so we can pick up in the middle of something that has transpired, and then that way we don't have to deal with the fact that there is no rebellion and there is no First Order. Who knows, man? I need to watch it again before I can definitively say, and I'm sure we're going to have another post review next week where we discuss some things. We may end up contradicting some of our original thoughts, but ultimately I feel like Snoke is one of the biggest disappointments so far to date in the entire Star Wars, an entire new launch of Star Wars. And not because he isn't cool, because he is. I just feel like, I mean, then again, David, let's look at it like this. How many times has a Star Wars character been squandered too early? Darth Maul.
Yes.
Darth Tyrannus.
Yes.
Captain Phasma.
Yes.
Boba Fett.
Yes.
I mean, it's endless. It's what Star Wars does. General Grievous.
Yes.
Characters are always squandered in Star Wars. So maybe this is just the same trend again.
The same trend for Star Wars. I mean, you need that character that they kind of waste. But it's so sad because, like, the one takeaway I had was Snoke was so damn powerful because, like, he didn't need a lightsaber. He showed that.
I think ultimately he comes down to a writing gimmick. Like you said, he was just there to help propel and put Kylo Ren in the position that he nees to be. All right, moving on to Finn. Finn was an utter disappointment. They replaced him they replaced his importance within the story with Rose Tico, who was the most uninteresting character I've ever seen in Star Wars. Annoying. She was worse than Kidster. Worse than Kidster. I'm going to say it again. Winning the race, of course. She was so obnoxious.
Yeah.
Her face, I wanted to punch her. And I feel bad saying that just because it's not the actor's fault. But I feel like she was just completely uninteresting. Her story did nothing for the movie. If you were to take her story out, okay, completely out of the movie, it would make no difference to the story. And that's how you know you have a bad script. If you can go back and say, I can cut this and cut this, guess what? You don't need it. And if it's left in, it's bad. She doesn't do anything. She doesn't even complete the mission that her entire movie or her entire arc was about. They were sent to go find a decoder. They didn't even need the decoder by the end of the movie. Decoder. So her story served absolutely no purpose. And when I say her story, I also mean Finn, because Finn was riding shotgun the entire time with zero emotional impact.
Yes.
And that's the worst part about it. The only thing that mattered was the very end. And I feel like this entire decoder fiasco that they sent them on was just a haphazard way to get Finn to confront Captain Phasma.
Yes.
And you could have done that so many other ways.
And especially since, don't get me wrong, I'm with you. I don't like the character of Rose, but her very beginning story arc was the fact that she was a character that just lost her twin sister.
But I don't give a shit. Who is she?
Yeah. And I was like, okay, maybe I can build something off of this, but the character was written so obnoxiously.
If she was integral to the storyline, then I could justify it even if I disliked her. I'm like, well, she had a purpose. But not only was she annoying, but she had no purpose. She had no place in the story at all. And the fact that they gave her, the worst part about it is the story was Finn and her. They were the dual characters this movie rather than Finn and Rey. And instead of allowing Finn to be the emotional drive with that story, which would have made it better since we like Finn.
Yeah.
Instead, Finn rides shotgun and the entire emotional drive of that narrative or that useless story arc was Rose. It was her drive. It's her emotions is what drove that story. And I have to question why.
Yeah.
Why would we do that when we already have an established character that's amazing? John Boyega is a great actor. Why would he play second fiddle to a subpar actor?
And also on top of that, the problem with Rose too that I found was especially when we get to the Canto Bight, the planet Canto Bight, all of a sudden she starts standing on her soapbox and saying how evil everybody is on this planet. And I'm going, oh God, she's the environmental character.
She isn't the environment. She's the Tumblr character.
Yeah.
She's representing the Tumblr audience. Just look who was cast. Look at the role she played. I've never felt like Star Wars I've never agreed.
She's the soapbox character.
I've never agreed with people, David, since Disney has taken over, that they have had an agenda with their movies. I feel like, hey, if you want a female lead, it would make sense to have a female lead. But let the story dictate the gender, not the gender dictate the story. Well,
yes.
These are things I keep saying. And so far, I think everything has been great. And Rose is an agenda.
She's an agenda.
That's
She's an agenda
all she
character.
is. She's an agenda character because if you look at the movie, you know what? I'm not going to go there. I'm going to wait until I watch it again. Because I have a final thought that I'm not going to share until I watch it again. But there's an underlining message there, and I feel like it's definitely there without a doubt.
There is one thing I do want to bring up, though. Maybe, hopefully, this brings us back to the light side.
Don't worry.
Of this, but I don't know your thoughts on it. But personally, I actually like Benicio del Toro. I like the character DJ. He was very mysterious, yes, but I did enjoy Benicio del Toro's character. Take it you didn't.
Okay. There's 5 actors that I love in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Okay. That I will watch anything they do. And Benicio Toro is number 1.
Yeah, I think that's the thing I had with it.
He is my favorite actor. He is one of my, everything he does is good. His movies are fantastic. He's an underrated actor. He doesn't get enough work or enough credit. And yes, his scenes were dynamite. He was good. But once again, his character popped up somewhere around the ending of the second act, and he left somewhere around the middle of the third act, and he served no purpose to the bigger story. How do you promote a character like that?
And not give him something.
Create the mystery behind this character, and he is completely irrelevant. I can't believe he even took the role. Unless they told him that this is an introduction and you're going to have a bigger role next movie. That doesn't justify the reason why he's in this movie for me as a viewer, but it does justify him making the decision to come in here. Me, I feel like, hey, if you're going to bring this guy in, give him something to do that actually matters to the story, because just like Rose's story doesn't matter, he's a part of Rose's story. Why does Rose's story matter? It doesn't matter. Then you cast another actor to interact with this character that doesn't matter.
That doesn't matter.
It's mind-numbing. It's a horrible decision. And I have never seen something like that in Star Wars ever. They've never done this type of thing with Star Wars. Lando was very much, I felt like Benicio del Toro's character was a lot like Lando in a lot of ways. He was suave. He was cool. He betrayed people at the last minute, although there was something that you still liked about him. I feel like in a lot of ways he was like Lando, but Lando was an integral part of the main story. He was there to betray Han Solo, that would then be used as bait to lure Luke Skywalker to Cloud City, that would then get him to confront Vader, that would then propel the emotional story and the ultimate reveal of Luke and Darth Vader being his father. That's how you write a story. He doesn't have to have an obvious point, but he has to be someone that's outside of the story, pulling a string of narrative, pulling and pulling and pulling until, oh, that's why it matters. Because you get to the end of the thread and you realize it's tied to the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Benicio del Toro is a strand of narrative that's connected to a story that's an anomaly because it doesn't belong in the story of The Last Jedi. It has no relevance. And that's my problem with it. Now, please continue with your Benicio del Toro.
Well, the thing was that I liked his, the only strength that was saving the entire thing with Finn and Rose was Benicio del Toro's character, because I liked the fact that, yeah, he betrayed everyone, but at the end of the day, it was kind of like you go, well, he is doing the smart thing to do. Liar! And you can't fault him for it.
But what did he do, David?
And exactly, what did he do? The problem was when I looked at the seat, when I basically wanted to put this either in the love category or the hate category, I was like you. I'm like, there's no substance behind it.
Unfortunately, Rose Tico, Benicio del Toro's character DJ, they are the filler aspect of the movie to entertain the mainstream masses. They did nothing for the Star Wars story. They did nothing to move the mythos forward. They did nothing. Poe Dameron became a giant testosterone pill that felt more like an agenda.
Yeah.
That felt like more an agenda push than anything. Guys are hot-headed, women are balanced and mild-tempered, and they get shit done. And I said I wasn't gonna get into that, you know. So I'm gonna stop there. But
okay, stop right there.
Yeah, I'm gonna stop there.
I have fuel to add to that fire, and I'm not going. No, I'm not gonna. I don't want to go.
Let's wait till next week. Let's watch the movie again. We come back. However, that does conclude our discussion on Star Wars: The Last Jedi. You can tell, I think, if you're listening and you've listened to this entire broadcast without getting upset because you think Last Jedi is the best thing since sliced bread, and you're very angry at us now, and you think of us as Kidster or maybe Rose Tico, you probably sense a lot of contradiction, because there is.
There is.
You remember, like, Luke, I can feel the conflict within you, Darth Vader. That's me right now, David. You guys can sense the conflict, because the fanboy in me absolutely loved parts of this movie. And then there's the other part of me that says, wow, that was really bad. And Dave, even some of the worst elements in the prequels don't amount to anger. There are elements in this movie that get me upset.
That's up to debate because there's still stuff
Okay,
in the prequels.
and at the end of Revenge of the Sith, as I said, I get angry with She Lost a Will to Live. And I get angry in Attack of the Clones with C-3PO's head being dragged by R2. Oh, this is such a drag. Like, there's things like that I want to blow my head off when I say.
Yeah.
I get so angry.
Yeah.
Also, the two heads in Phantom Menace.
Two heads of Phantom Menace. I know you have a lot of forgiveness for Jar Jar. I just feel he was just a pointless character.
No, he wasn't pointless, dude. He had a point.
Until at the very end, yes.
No, he had a point. He had a point in Attack of the Clones. He had a point in the Phantom Menace. He wasn't just this sideline character to be dumb. Yes, he was dumb, and he was there to entertain and sell toys. At least that's what George Lucas was hoping. But he was also connected to the story.
Yeah. I see your point there.
He was connected to the story. He mattered. He pushed things forward for Qui-Gon. He pushed things forward for Obi-Wan. He pushed things forward for the connection between the Naboo humans and the Gungans that would end up creating a united army. And they would all fight together to liberate their planet from occupied forces. So he had a point. You can't say that about Rose or DJ. If you take them out, the movie would still end the same way. So ultimately, Dave, let's go ahead and rate these movies. Okay, let's start with you. Leave Rogue One out for now. No, you know what? No, Rogue One's part of Star Wars.
Yeah, Rogue One's part of Star Wars.
Let's keep Rogue One in there. Go ahead and rate your movies in order from best to least.
Of the entire trilogy, entire saga,
the entire Star Wars saga up to date.
Whew. Okay.
It's going to be tough, but let's start. Let's do it.
Number 1, Empire Strikes Back. Number 2, I'm going to go Force Awakens.
Look at you gaining better respect for that movie.
Yeah,
because it wasn't
I watched
number 2.
It so many times now,
dude. It's so good.
And then number 3, I'm going to put No Hope. Number 4. I am going to put Return of the Jedi.
Wow, you're surprising me here.
Number 5.
Write these down, too.
Number 5 is going to be a shocker because I've watched it multiple times now the past couple of years, and it's starting to grow on me. Revenge of the Sith. Number 6, Rogue One. Number 7 is going to be The Last Jedi.
What?
Number 8 is going to be Attack of the Clones. And number 9 will always be Phantom Menace. That's just there.
All right.
It's not moving.
Okay, here I go. This is so hard because...
Dude, you should be happy. Revenge of the Sith went up my rank.
All right, let me do this. Let me figure this out. All right, so I have... So Empire, Revenge of the Sith, The Force Awakens, A New Hope, Attack of the Clones, Return of the Jedi, Phantom Menace, The Last Jedi, Rogue One. And it pains me to put The Last Jedi at number 8. It hurts because I don't feel like that's being fair. However, when you look at all these movies, I feel like out of all these movies, it's the poorest written movie of the bunch. It doesn't mean it's bad. It just means it's the poorest written one.
It's the weakest one.
It's the weakest written script.
That's probably the best way to put it is it's the weakest one.
And some people may say, what the fuck are you talking about? The prequels were god-awful. The prequels were not god-awful.
I agree with you.
You may not agree with certain things.
Yeah.
But the story was there. And it was a solid story.
The story was there. It's just that I don't agree with like...
Last Jedi felt like the last 10 minutes of The Force Awakens. It felt like the denouement. It could have been put at the end, and we would have been like, all right, so when's the next movie coming out? Because that's what The Last Jedi amounts to. Despite all the coolness in it, it amounts to the last 10 minutes. That's what I feel like they could have taken all of that. Even Finn and the Captain Phasma fight. That should have been in Force Awakens, that ending.
You know what the funny part is? I vaguely remember us talking about Force Awakens. The only thing that we felt... I could have sworn either me or you said it, was like we felt that Force Awakens was a little too short. It felt like it was fast. we got through it.
I have to go back and listen. I feel like I think what I remember, my only problem I had with Force Awakens that was a deal breaker for me was the score. I feel like the score was great and it's good now when I listen to it, but it didn't punch through. Like all the other John Williams composed bits in Star Wars, it always punched through. Even in Rogue One, the score punched through. Like with The Force Awakens, I feel like it was a bit subtle in some places. And it wasn't enough especially when you're accustomed to the John Williams trumpets just blowing your eardrums out. I felt like they were a little bit more subtle with the score.
That was the one thing that I put. I don't know what your thoughts were on it, but the score in this one was damn pretty good. They had their right beats placed. Like, as I said,
the score was much better.
The score was much better because like the beats with the Force elements and that freaking scene that still haunts me to this day is Luke in the binary sunset, not sunrise, sunset. That was tear jerking, and the music helped just emphasize that emotion.
Yeah. So Dave, you know what we're going to do is to be fair to all of our ongoing listeners, because I know there's going to be some people that are really upset at us, and I want to be fair. And I want to make sure first off, I know I'm right about the Rose Tico stuff. I agree with you with the Rose Tico. When it comes to writing, I know I'm right. Without a shadow of a doubt, the story was pointless. So I'm never going to go back and rewatch it and say it mattered. It didn't matter, and it will always be a blight on Star Wars. And that's why I'm so fucking devastated right now. That bullshit, pointless story is forever going to be in Star Wars. Oh, however, I want to take a few days. I want to watch the movie again a couple times. And then by either next week or maybe even when we come back from winter break, because we're going to be gone for about 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And then when we come back from winter break, after rewatching, maybe then we can reanalyze and reorder our numbers and see where it falls now. Because I feel guilty. I've never felt guilty before when reviewing a movie, but I feel guilty that I put The Last Jedi at number 8 because there was so much heart to this movie.
Yeah.
There were so many fantastic moments, but when it really, like I said, when you really break it down, and it really comes down to trying to make a decision as to what really transpired in the movie, not a lot transpired.
Yeah, and the thing was, I kept asking myself, I'm like you, it's kind of like I feel guilty about not praising Last Jedi more and just going, it's good. Because, like, this movie had so many great moments.
I like how we're justifying. Like, we're like, I love you. I promise I love you still.
I love you.
I love you, but I hate you.
The question that I had that was going in my head while I was thinking of the review of this, is this Oscar worthy? Is this critically acclaim worthy?
Oh, fuck no, dude.
Yeah.
Revenge of the Sith, Empire, possibly Force Awakens. I think those movies have all the elements that could say, you know, let's just end this. We're going around and around.
Because we feel so bad.
I know. I think we need to end this. We're going on almost 2 hours. We need to stop.
You got it.
I want to thank everybody for listening. Thank you, David.
Thank you. May the Force be with us.
Hello, this is Stormtrooper 1, and if you've missed any portion of the show, you can always head over to FromTheBackToTank.com and listen to the show at your leisure. We're also on Stitcher, Smart Radio, Stitcher.com, search Bacta, and that is to your favorites. Thank you, and listen responsibly. And may the Force be with you. And long live. Thank you for listening to From the Back to Tank. And From the Back to Tank is executive produced by Michael Flores and Dustin Lucas. Hosted by Michael Flores, David Zabal. You can find out more about our show by going to www.fromthebacktottank.com. You can also find us on Twitter at FromBackToTank, as well as Facebook, facebook.com/FromTheBackToTank.